Hi there, welcome back. Thank you for hanging out with me. In this lesson, we're going to put together a simple 5-inch tier, a 5-layer 5-inch cake. We're going to frost it in buttercream and we're going to decorate it with fresh flowers. So let's do it. So the first thing I like to do with my cake tiers is support. All my cakes have to have good support, and my support starts with my cake base, my cake board. I prefer to use MDF boards because usually my cakes are taller than usual. So I have my MDF board here and I've drilled a hole in it, and this hole is going to hold my center rod. This is a small tier. I'm not going to put a lot of dowels in it because it's small. But the one thing it will have is a center dowel to hold it in place and make sure it stays secure to the board. This is my center rod. It is a poly dowel. It is 5/8 in diameter and it has channels inside of them that keep them very sturdy. I love using them. I love them for center rods, and I love them also in larger cakes as my perimeter dowels. So I'm going to place this in my center hole. So now it's nicely secured. I make the hole just wide enough so it fits nice and snug. I don't have to glue it in. It just stays in place. So now that I have my cake board and my center rod in place, I'm also going to place a cake board at the bottom. This is going to be at the bottom of my board. There used to be a time where I would frost my cakes directly to my cake board. But over time, because of the height of my cakes and they're heavy, and because of transport, because my clients have to transport their cakes, and sometimes the weather is warm, I wanted to secure the cake even more. So, like I said, support is key. My support starts from the cake board, my center rod, and now my cake board. I take a generous amount of buttercream to glue my cake board in place. Now I'm going to stack my cake layers. This is my white chocolate raspberry cake layers. It's made with fresh raspberries. I always work with frozen cakes. So once my cakes have been baked, I will freeze them until it's ready to use. I love to work with frozen cake because it makes the process very easy and fast. So I've already put my holes in each of the tiers so it will go directly through my center rod. I usually frost my cakes without bags, but for this class I will frost with a bag, and you also see me sometimes frosting without one. Over time you'll figure out what works best for you. This is usually my preference, without the bag. So now I know that my center dowel will be too tall for my cake tier. So I'm going to cut this to size. I'm going to cover this up. To cut the poly dowels, you use a Milwaukee cutter. It gives it a nice clean cut, a nice straight cut. I like to frost my cakes 3 times. I do the first coat, which is usually the crumb coat. I usually don't have crumbs because it is frozen cake, but I do it anyway. That's my first layer, the crumb coat. Then when I go to put another layer of buttercream on it, I now have a firmer surface because once I put the first coat, I'll put it in the fridge, let it get hard, and because the cake is cold and frozen, it hardens up really, really quick. I put it in the fridge, let it get harder, bring it out, and now I now have a firm structure to build on. So I'll put the second coat, and by the time I'm ready for the third, I have straight sides and I have sharp tops. this will be my first coat. So when you are using your scraper, you want to keep it, I keep it at an angle, and I leave it in one spot so it stays right here. It's not moving around the board. It stays in one spot, and my turntable goes to it, okay? So when I use the scraper, my goal is, as I scrape, all the sides of the cake should touch the scraper. So right now you can see that it touches right here, but it doesn't touch right here. So I need more buttercream right there. So I'm going to fill that in. The first coat is usually a rough one, okay? It's a rough coat, but at the same time I want all the sides of the cake to touch my scraper. So I will fill it in the first time around to make sure I have a foundation that I'm going to build on once it's cold. So this is building the foundation for my third coat. So I'm going to scrape this off again. And I'm going to give you a closer look at when I scrape. So now it's looking a little better, but I still have some holes which I'm going to fill up. So if you see how it's looking better, I'm just going to fill some of the holes, so that way every part of the cake touches. Okay? Every part, I want every part of it to touch. Okay, this is the foundation for my second and third coat. And I'm holding the scraper at an angle. So I'm not holding the scraper straight. I'm not holding it straight. I'm holding it at an angle. It's at an angle. Alright, so I'm happy with this first coat. Smooth the top. Make it as smooth as possible in preparation for the second and third coat. Alright, so there's my first. Not shabby, right? So I'm going to stick this back in the refrigerator for a few minutes, let it get hard, and we'll do it again twice. The first coat is nice and firm, so I'm going to add a second coat to it. You take your scraper, you hold it at an angle, and you turn your turntable while leaving the scraper in place. So for the second and third coat, you are pretty much removing a whole bunch of the buttercream you've placed. You're filling in holes. That's pretty much what you're doing. Filling in the holes to give you a perfect cylinder. So I'm going to fill in all these holes you see so that my scraper will touch every part of this cake to give me a smooth finish. So we're going to do it again. fill in one more time, then I'll put it in the fridge and it'll be ready for the final coat. You see how I'm already getting a nice edge? That's what having a good foundation does. You create a base to allow the second and the third coat finish up what you started. At this point, I'm not really using any heat. I would typically use heat up my scraper for the final coat to give me that smooth finish. I always have a spot where I end, because at the point where you end, you usually have some drag marks. So I always have a point. So you can stop at the back, you identify what part of your cake is the back, but I tend to stop right next to my logo. So that's usually where I stop. So I'll usually start by my logo and I'll stop by my logo. And my logo is usually on the side. So my logo is usually on the side. I'll start here and I'll end here. So now this is ready. I'll put this back in the fridge and we'll be ready for our final and third coat. One of the techniques I use to finish up my cakes for the final and third coat is to melt some buttercream in the microwave. You want to stick it in the microwave long enough to make it soft and smooth, very smooth, but not long enough to break it, where it is so liquidy beyond recognition. Okay? So I'm going to place this on. See how soft and smooth that is? So I like it nice and soft. That way it will go into every crevice, in every hole, and fill it in nicely to give me a flawless finish. This is usually messy, especially when it's very, very soft. But it's worth the mess. The cake is cold, so it forms really fast. Cake is so cold. My buttercream is getting hard. See that? Cold cake. So this is what I'm going to do at this point. A dry heat is readily accessible. Right there. place the cake back in the fridge so it hardens before you remove the top, so you can get a flawless sharp edge. Or I usually do it this way, where I just take it off before it goes back in the fridge, because the cake is already cold. So I just gently scoop it off. And when it comes out of the fridge, I'll finish it up. I'm happy with the finish. I'll stick it in the fridge so it gets hard enough. We'll stencil it some and finish it up with some flowers.